today we will be looking at the UNISA Theory of Music Grade 6 melody writing component. Now, well done if you have made it to this level of music theory. My goodness, you are officially a higher class music nerd. You know that melody writing and anything actually at this level is quite tricky. So today we will only be looking at one example of a melody writing question in the grade 6 paper. It is only in treble clef and we will only be looking at a major key. So what they want you to do at the grade 6 level is to complete a given melody within 12 bars or 16 bars. Today we are looking specifically at 12 bar completion of a melody writing exercise. So what UNISA does want us to do at this point is to use proper sequences, proper modulation, proper phrasing, and the inclusion of secondary dominants, which will happen, I would say, naturally if you're going to use the method that I'm going to pose to you today, whereby we'll be going through secondary dominants using a modulating sequence. So it'll tick all the boxes that UNISA would like to see. We also need to choose an instrument. So of course there will be a treble clef option and a bass clef option. So if you feel like you want to write for violin or flute or oboe, you do so in the treble clef, or if you feel you want to write for bassoon, cello, double bass, you do so in the bass clef. So today we'll be looking specifically at a treble clef example, and I'm just going to say that we're composing it for recorder because that's what I'm going to play it on today. So what they would also like you to know is that if you're writing for a specific instrument, can the specific instrument play within that range? Can it do slurs or staccatos or whatever? Because those things will also be left up to us. Proper dynamic indication, proper articulation indication. So it's a lot. So I do advise you to watch the grade 3 melody writing, grade 4 melody writing, as well as grade 5 melody writing videos before going through this, so that we have a foundation upon which we are building. Because today we're deep diving into the nitty-gritties, and if we don't know, chords by now, or if we don't know, oh, this is a dominant 7th by now, or oh, we actually end on a long tonic, and oh my goodness, what do upbeats mean for that? If you don't know any of that, then this is going to be quite tricky. So I would say please familiarize yourself with the other resources first, and then come back to watch this video. But without further ado, we're going to look at this example. So we have a D major example here. I just want to burst a little bit of your bubble. In the grade 6 paper and for the exams previously published by UNISA for grade 5 and 6, they really do like asking minor keys, eh? That's great. I will make another video on minor keys. But I mean, same application, same. It's just with minor keys, we always have to think, of course, about our raised 7th. But hey, we're looking at major today. D major, we do have to modulate. And I mean, the closely related keys would be our dominant key, our relative minor key, and those two keys we are going to pass through today. So we do have to think about D major, but also A major as well as B minor. And B minor obviously has a raised 7th. Yes, I mean, A major even has an accidental. For instance, from D major, if you're going to A, you need that G sharp. So there's a lot of things we need to think about today. And I also took some time plotting out, interestingly on manuscript paper, a nice melody for today. And this is what we're going to be going through right now. Now, of course, there are other methods to do this. There's not just one right answer. And that's what I think at this level makes things quite tricky, quite complicated, because there are many ways to do it right. However, there are many ways to do it wrong. So today I'm giving you one surefire way to do it right. I'm also going to link in the description below a nice graphic representation that I've gotten from one of my previous teachers on how to outline a 12-bar melody in a major key. So what we need to do is look at our melody that they start us off with. They do say we're mezzo piano, they give us some slurring, articulation, they say we're andante, we're in 2/4, which already means, okay, right at the end we're going to have a long note minus the upbeat. So we basically need a crotchet and a quaver at the end, or it can be a dotted crotchet, for instance. So many options. Where do we start? Well, let me say we start by phrasing what they give us so that we know this is going to be our first phrase. Now, they give us an upbeat, a beat 1, a beat 2 in bar 1, then a beat 1 in bar 2. So I would like to say, let's maybe even just end that original phrase, just copying the last note that they do. We will put a quaver there because what makes sense is for us to have an upbeat quaver to go to bar 3, blah, 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 blah. We want to carry the upbeat throughout. So every phrase that we're going to start is going to start with the quaver upbeat. Okay, so already just completing sort of the first phrase is already quite difficult, you know, different. Now already we can go to the end and say, okay, this is D major. I can either end on a low dotted crotchet D or even a high dotted crotchet D. We'll keep that in the balance there. We can change that because maybe we want to end on a quaver and a crotchet. Depends on what we're about to do now. Okay, so we know that we have mezzo piano. Maybe later on we'll add in a mezzo forte, or we'll even put in a ritardando tempo-wise, or we can have crescendos, decrescendos for dynamics. But right now, let's first plot out our chords. We do know that this bar is open for debate. We would like to end our first line, you know, on a tonic, because that's what we're going to do. I think what's best is really to go and use this time to really be composers in our own right and give this a ternary structure. So we have A, B, A. So that our first line and our last line can sort of echo each other. Again, the principle of something familiar and something different. So our something familiar will be our outer 2 lines, so to speak. So bars 1 to 4 and bars 9 to 12. The middle bars, or the second line, will be the difference. That'll be a B section. So just to know that we can sort of echo things, because already we know from previous melody writing years, yes, we want to end on a long note. Yes, we want sort of our second to last bar really to outline our dominant, but we want something that's familiar. We want to sequence, we want to copy paste somewhere, and definitely we are going to copy paste our upbeat and our whole this. We're going to copy paste it, right? So already we know that we can have these bars over here and that upbeat over there. So we can already do this, right? We can copy paste bar 1 over here, which is now into bar 9. We copy paste bar 1 into bar 9, and everything we do is going to be very systematic. We're going to use the slur that they give us. So we copy paste the upbeat, we do that in bar 9. Bar 10 is going to be a nice copy paste of bar 2, and we have the articulation there and the note that we added. So even there we can add our phrase. Phrase comes from the previous line. So there we go. Interesting. We know that at this point we like using our dominant 7th. It's something that we know and love. So we will have our last 2 bars going dominant 7th to tonic in our key. So of course we need to outline our chords, and I've done so on my little pagey page that I went through. But as you know from other grades previously, not just in melody writing but also in 4-part harmony and in just simple isolated chord writing from years before that, you have to know your chords on every degree of the scale. So outline your 3-note chords. Of course, your dominant 7th is going to be a quartet, so that one will have an extra note, so an extra third above your last note, above your chord. So we want to end like that, right? So this bar here will outline your dominant 7th. So of course the dominant 7th in D major is A, C sharp, E, G. So we want those notes. We can also have passing notes in between. It's also a way that we use passing notes. We don't just jump to non-chord notes. We can jump between chord notes, but we have to stepwise work through non-chord notes. Okay, but when we have quartets, that also becomes easier in life. So the next thing we want to know is chord-wise, what do we do? What do we do here and here? Well, because we know that our A sections need to be similar, and we've already outlined the back end. We're basically just going to do dominant 7th to tonic also there in bars 3 and 4. Nice and easy. Then what we're going to do here is where we modulate, and here's where the sequencing and the modulation and everything comes into being, because we can actually already say, okay, the dominant is A major. I want to go and establish just a little modulating sequence. So I want to establish that I'm passing through the key of A major. So we're going to do dominant 7th, because we do dominant 7th now, to tonic in A, and I'm just going to outline a little A dotty dotty there. And then, well, we want to pass through another key. And also if we just go one step up, you know, like we like doing the one step up thing, a sequence. Hello, even by just doing it melodically, harmonically, we actually will be passing through D major's relative minor, which is B minor. We will be passing through it, and I'll show you that now. So we want B minor, dominant 7th tonic there, which is great. So we're passing through 2 keys, and we actually have been modulated kind of. We're not establishing a new key, we're just passing through. But that's okay, in and of itself, that's a quick modulation, and that's enough within a 12-bar scope. Then what we want to do is fill up here before we go back to our A section and we recognize a known phrase from before. So we're going to pause back through A major. Now we're just going to, this is basically having a longer establishment of a key, just for a little bit longer than just a quick sequence, passing through. This is more like, okay, we're not just passing, we're going to sit there for 2 bars, then we're coming back. Okay, so that also, it will do well in UNISA's eyes and in your own eyes and ears as you're going to practice this, because this is something that, albeit you can't play and listen to in the exam when you're writing, you can play it and listen to it and practice it out loud on your instrument when you are learning this and going through the motions. So we're going to have dominant 7th, which will continue, you know, because why not? And then we'll establish our A major here, just before going back to, well, our D major. And of course this is outlining D major tonic. This moves on to something else, but even here, in the beginning, you can see that just the presence of that A indicates dominant, or we can even say, yay, it alludes dominant 7th at this point in our lives. So same, we're going to have dominant 7th and obviously tonic. Now all those little things you can erase, you know, afterwards the examiner doesn't need to see that, but at times it's nice to leave that there. That is fine, you don't have to erase such things. You can always erase your chords and whatever somewhere. Plan that at the back, manuscript paper wise, of your exam. But it is nice to leave some of these, especially the modulating parts, the chord structure there, so that you know what you're basing your things on and the examiner knows what you're basing your things on. So let's get started. I think we will outline our dominant 7th and try to think of what can precede that. So in normal harmonic structure, what can precede a dominant? Well, of course, tonic, and we have tonic here. So I wouldn't say let's go tonic, dominant 7th. In the bigger scheme of things, you can say maybe tonic, subdominant, dominant 7th, tonic. Or even here, preceding the dominant 7th and following on the tonic, we can have the supertonic. So in this case, I think I'm just going to go for the subdominant. I mean, they both have the same chord notes in common, and those chord notes that are in common are actually here, which is the G and the B. They both find themselves in the supertonic chord of D major as well as the subdominant chord. So we can literally have either. I think I'm just going to go with the subdominant. So what now makes the subdominant a little bit different from the supertonic is that the supertonic would have an E, whereas subdominant will have a D. So I will go to the D. And, you know, we could put these together, you know, we could link them together, but they are part of different phrases, so I'm going to separate them now. So it's crazy, all of these things come in to play now. You're making rules, breaking rules, kind of, because I mean, if you were in pre-grade 1 right now, that theory level, you would be like, I need to be in those together. But in pre-grade 1, you've never dealt with upbeats. In pre-grade 1, we're not thinking about phrasing and suitable articulation, which, just judging by this, I would actually want to put a little staccato there. So we have dum, ba-da-da-dum, bum, ba-da-da-dum. And then we start our upbeat phrase. And because they didn't put a staccato there, I'm not going to put a staccato there. Okay, so that's my reasoning there. So we're going to outline our dominant 7, which in D major is A, C sharp, E, G. I think I'm going to go from, because I went from a D there, D and A, the relationship here, like dominant to tonic, and this chord note is still the tonic note of D major. So I think I'm just going to actually land on the A, which is actually the root note of our dominant 7th. Oh my goodness, all these things. This is what we think about now at this level. So I'm going to go A, C sharp, E, and then I think I'm going to go up to G, and maybe I just want to fall down to my tonic, which I think, because of this, I'm going to have a crotchet and then a quaver, that's staccato over there. And these notes I can fill in the rhythms that are going to be copying what rhythms we had before. So because we had ta taka over there, I'm going to go ta taka ta taka. And then also because we had slurs between certain of these notes and rhythms, I'm going to do that. So that does it for our very first line, our very first A section, our very first completion of a line. Now we will go on to the B section, which is the second line. And I think what is also very helpful is really to label these bars. So we're going to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, which we just filled in. Then we have bar 5, bar 6, bar 7, bar 8, and these are numbers that you can just erase afterwards. These the examiner doesn't ever really need to see. You can take that away, but this is just for our own purposes now so that we know where we are. So yes, that is a 9, not an A. There we go. So we have our first line. That is great. We're now going to have the start of our modulating sequences. Okay, and this is very interesting because now we need to think about the dominant seventh in the key of A. So I've jotted this down for myself. It is now E, G sharp, B, D, and just because I'm going to start on the G sharp, so this obviously now needs to be a quaver because we have an upbeat, we're carrying it the whole way through. Literally, you can have that note be E, G sharp, B, or D, and you know, you could have it displaced by an octave up anyway. I wouldn't say go down. I wouldn't go lower than the lowest note that they give us so far, which is D, also our tonic. So I would go between that D and maybe an octave above that A. So we have an octave and a half to deal with, you know, within a single melodic instrument range. Of course, for instance, if you're writing for flute or violin, they can go to the extremes of different registers. So a violin can go to the low G below middle C, and for instance a flute, even a recorder, can play very, very high, but let us keep it within a respectable range. I would say an octave and a half is very safe and respectable. So I would say, okay, dominant seventh to tonic, this is already, I would have a little note here for an A. Now what to do with that A? Well, I see we have a little G, A, B there, and it's takkata. So we have two semiquavers and a quaver. I think I'm just going to go A, B, C sharp because I can. That already, you know, allows me to say, yes, this is a chord note A, this is a chord note C sharp, but it already gives me a little passing note just because over there. And then I think I will go there, like that. And I want to start the next modulating sequence, you know, on a quaver as well. And we just wrote that G sharp, A, B, C sharp, A. I just ended on an A because A, it's our tonic. I think it's just really to make sense in my head. You'll see how this sounds as well. It sounds beautiful, okay? But theoretically, before I'm even sounding this out or listening to it, it works, okay? So now we have a modulating sequence. We're actually just going to write one note up from what we have here. So G sharp then goes to A sharp, A goes to B, B goes to C sharp goes to D, and of course we ended that little thing, phrase, sub-phrase, on an A, so we're going to end it here on a B, and without us even thinking about it, right? We can chop and change our stem direction as necessary, but without us thinking about it, we have now passed to A major. Yes, we actively thought about that, but we didn't even actively think about this B minor thing because we're actually just writing it like a sequence, one note up. But this is your modulating sequence, and this is your dominant seventh little chord note in B minor, and this outlines your tonic in B minor, the B, D, we don't have now the F sharp, that's fine, we don't need the fifth, but we've got B, D, and we have a passing note even. Oh my goodness, that is beautiful. And we didn't even think in our head, oh, modulating sequence, we just thought now sequence, and we didn't even actively think about going to the key of B minor, but we are in it just by doing that sequence thing. So we actually have a sequence, not only that, a beautiful modulating sequence. So we passed through two keys already, A major and B minor. Now we're quickly going to re-establish our A major, and then we already have part of our A section for the next part again. So that's beautiful. We've come a long way. And I just need to phrase this part now. So I'm going to go from that G sharp, which goes over here all the way to that B. We could sub-phrase if we want to. So from that G sharp to that A, and from that A sharp to that B. But I'm not going to do that. I am, however, going to put in our slurs from there to there because what they have given us already showcases beautiful slurs. So we have that I'm not going to put any staccato articulation piece here. What I do know is that over here I need to have my tonic chord line out. So I'm going to put a quick note head there for A, because we're going back to A major now. So we're going to start here, dominant 7th of A, and this whole bar is also going to be based on dominant 7th of A. So just because we have a 5th between B and E, I think I'm going to start actually on the root note of the dominant 7th chord in A, and we're going to have that as an E. Then, you know, why not keep that E going here? So E, G sharp B is our outline chord. We also obviously have D. So I'm actually going to go right there, and we need to get down to that A. So I might as well just fall down to it, come down stepwise. It means we'll also essentially then have a passing note very naturally in there without me even thinking about it too much. So yeah, I think we'll have that. And again, we'll group that rhythm that we know and love. So I think we'll go, could go taka-ta, but maybe let's go ta-taka now, because there I switched up a bit, ta-taka, ta-taka. So we can also do here ta-taka, ta-taka. I like that. And we have our chord notes, which let me actually circle that for us. Our chord notes of the dominant 7th here would be that E, it would be our G sharp, B, the D. Okay, obviously there's a B as well. So this has a passing note. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. You know, everything is just coming together without me really even thinking too much about it. But it's because it's based on a foundation of grade 3 melody writing, grade 4 melody writing, grade 5 melody writing, and now in grade 6 we can use all of those things, and they come up so beautifully here. You know, it's really about this being in our creative space, and I know creative spaces are difficult because we would rather want someone to say, this is what you need to do. But when we actually have choice, it's quite difficult and tricky because we need to make the right choices. So chord notes with a passing note, and you can even look at your chord notes in the other structured chord places and see where your chord notes are and then what happens to be a passing note. Like over here, we have some passing notes in the middle of our chord notes, and that's great. That is what is expected of us at this level. So we have our dominant 7th, even with a passing note, oh my goodness, and we have beautiful rhythms that join everything together, make it nice and concise. And we are here now with the tonic chord. So we're on A, and again, all of my phrases, my main phrases, have ended with a quaver. So I think this is going to be the same. I could do A, crotchet A, but it's kind of then boring because A, because that's already the upbeat for the next part. So let's use another chord note of our tonic chord in A major, A, C sharp, E. I wouldn't go to the E. I think I'm just going to go C sharp, right? And then can end that with a staccato because I've done that there, and then just to keep it nice and, you know, cohesive, I'm doing that there. Then this was a copy paste from upbeat to bar 1 and bar 2. So we have upbeat to bar 1 and 2 into upbeat to bar 9 and 10. It's a direct copy paste. And this is a note that we fill in. So I'm going to fill in that D there because there's no reason to change that. That's sort of based now, we said, on subdominant, this little thingy, and I guess the whole bar. But we really thought about the subdominant here because we didn't have to think there. They gave it to us, right? So that is that for us. Let me make that subdominant beautiful. So now we have dominant 7th tonic, and yes, we could literally do something like we did it there in bar 3, but I mean bar 11 needs to be something different, something special. We could either slow down the rhythmic motion here, so to speak. We could maybe go crotchet, for instance, maybe to make something different, like, oh, something's cool here. Or we can, you know, have a little faster pace, something. We could go semiquaver, so taka 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 taka. And I think that's what I want to do. We could really do ta taka ta te, or we could even go ta taka ta taka, or the opposite kind of things, taka ta taka ta. So many things we could do, and I mean, we just need to base it on our chord tab. So 4 notes. We'd like to maybe have a scale-like thing or some passing notes in between, and you know, what better than, you know, starting on our dominant, which of course is A in the key of D major, because we're back in D major now, ever since that, that we copy pasted from the beginning. Here again, our A section returns because that's what we know and love and expect from ternary form. We're back in the A section, we're back in our original key, and I think I'm going to just go up. So we have our semiquavers that goes up, and what we will also do is try and think where we want to end. And I would want to end then on the high tonic, right? I would want to go to that D, because we said we were leaving this open for discussion later on, and I think it's best to then end there. We have a nice climax here then. And I would say we want to end going T-do. So going C sharp to D and going backwards then in terms of semiquaver form, we end up beginning our second crotchet beat on this G. Now, jumping from a D, which is a non-chord note, right? A, C sharp, E, and G would be a chord note. So I could change this D to an E, which is great. That can happen because a jump between the C sharp and the E is allowed, and then a jump between that E and this G is allowed. Okay, so originally I had that D there, but right now I want to change it because it's not going to sound 100% right. It might sound 80% okay if I had that D there, but this would sound better. Okay, so I'm actually going to go ahead and change that D officially on my workings out to an E. Okay, so I'm also learning through this. We can then phrase, and I think at the end, because we just have always ended our phrases with a something and a staccato quaver. So there is something, staccato quaver, crotchet, staccato quaver, crotchet, staccato quaver, and here crotchet, staccato quaver. So that would be that. All in all, we have 12 bars, of course, of which they probably give us 1.5 bars. We have to then fill in that first line, and most likely they will give us an upbeat. So looking at this 12-bar melody in the treble clef in a major key, the outline is we're going to have tonic right at the beginning in our home key. We're going to go dominant 7th tonic at the end of that very section, the first A section. As we go to our B section, we're modulating from the dominant 7th of the dominant, so that's a secondary dominant. And we're making a modulating sequence because we are doing a little bit of a phrase. We're establishing a dominant 7th to tonic in our dominant key, and then we have a sequence one step up, which will actually then establish and let us pass through the key of B minor, which is the relative minor of D major. We're going dominant 7th to tonic, and we can outline it there, but literally we have melodically just one step up, and we don't even have to think about the key that we're in. We definitely have to pay attention to our accidentals and our 7ths, but this is quite easy. Then we're passing back through our dominant of our dominant, and we need to outline our dominant keys, dominant 7th, establishing it to the tonic in bar 8. Then we have a copy paste from the beginning, yay, which brings us to only having to fill in then again bars 11 and 12. So bar 12, of course, you're on your tonic, and you can choose the higher or lower one. I've chosen the higher one here. I've outlined my dominant 7th, and let's take a listen to how this will sound. Okay, so before we play this very 2, for example, you'll notice that we do have dynamic indication. So right at the beginning they say mezzo piano. So we have to, musically so, try to adapt, just like we did with the articulation, try to adapt the dynamics also to the rest of our melody. So we have to think, on this instrument that we're writing for recorder, do we get louder as we go higher in range? Do we get softer? What works? Can it go either way? What do I want to do? I would say don't go to the extremes of dynamics, so don't go fortissimo or pianissimo. If they give us a nice moderate dynamic mezzo piano, let's maybe go to mezzo forte if we want to, a forte if we want to the other side, piano. One of those, 2 of those would do. Don't do too much. So we have options. On my jotted down version, I noted that I'd go section B, mezzo forte, section A again, mezzo piano, maybe increasing in loudness here going to mezzo forte. But here on the board now, I've indicated a different example, also very musically based. mezzo piano, they give it to us, then I just suggest, without changing dynamics, that we stay mezzo piano up until the end of the B section. Then, the return of the A section, I say, let's go mezzo forte here, okay? And then we increase in loudness at the end and go to a forte. I have the crescendo sign there. You know, we could do something like that, and that wouldn't be questionable. That sounds about right. Questionable would be if you have your A section start out mezzo piano, you go fortissimo for section B, and then you go pianissimo for section A, the return thereof when you go from bars 9 to 12. So keep it nice and concise so that we can join everything together. So now I will play this version. I will do mezzo piano, I will go mezzo forte, we'll increase to forte at the end, and you'll see that this sounds beautiful because it is theoretically based. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Sweet! So a good example that you can get full marks for your 12 bars. Remember, this is just how to approach completion of a 12-bar melody in the treble clef in a major key. So of course it means you are staying in your major in your very first line. You are going to your dominant and establishing a dominant tonic in the dominant of your key, so secondary dominant there. You're going dominant tonic in your relative minor key, you're going back to your dominant key, dominant tonic, and then you're going back to your original key. Copy paste from the beginning, you have your tonic for your major. You move over to the last 2 bars, dominant 7th, tonic. Now do be on the lookout for my video on approaching 12 bars within a minor key, because obviously it will look a little bit different to this. Happy practicing and all the best for your grade 6 UNISA Theory of Music paper.